Richard Petty just said what everybody was already thinking, and he did not hold back even a little bit. When one of the greatest drivers in NASCAR history calls you out by name, you know the whole sport is watching. We've seen plenty of short-track tempers flare over the decades, but what unfolded at Martinsville Speedway this weekend will go down as one of the ugliest and most controversial moments of the entire season. Bubba Wallace found himself tangled up in a massive wreck that completely destroyed his car and wiped out half the field in the process. The incident started on the front stretch when the racing got incredibly tight. They were going 3 wide into the corner, pushing and shoving like they always do at Martinsville. But then things took a dramatic turn. Carson Hocevar was running his line, trying to stay on the lead lap, when Wallace seemed to deliver an intentional shove that sent Hocevar spinning. The chain reaction was absolutely devastating. Cars were piling into each other. Metal was crunching and smoke was billowing across the track. It knocked several top contenders right out of the race, resulting in a frustrating DNF for drivers who had no business being involved in that mess. The infield care center was suddenly very busy, and the garage area was buzzing with sheer anger and disbelief over the sheer volume of collateral damage caused by one single maneuver. When Wallace finally climbed out of his ruined machine, he tried to play it off as a simple racing incident, claiming his brakes locked up and he just lost control. But a lot of people watching immediately called his bluff, and nobody was more brutally blunt about it than the king himself. Richard Petty took to the airwaves and delivered a dominating critique that completely dismantled Wallace's excuse. Petty stated that it was painfully obvious to anyone with a pair of eyes that Wallace turned down into Hocevar on purpose. He pointed out the steering telemetry, the throttle traces, and the undeniable visual evidence that contradicted the brake failure narrative. Petty said that champions do not let terrible frustration cloud their judgment to the point where they weaponize their race cars on a crowded short track. And Petty was not the only big name to chime in. The entire NASCAR community echoed this sentiment, flooding podcasts and social media with outrage at the deliberate nature of the crash. Kyle Petty then stepped in to offer a deeper, far more fascinating psychological analysis of what is truly going on inside the mind of Bubba Wallace right now. According to Kyle, this was not just about Hocevar. This was about the crushing internal pressure building up inside the 2-3 She Racing camp. Tyler Reddick, Wallace's teammate, has been absolutely dominating lately. Reddick has been winning races, running up front, and establishing himself as a legitimate championship threat. For Wallace, who has struggled to find that same level of consistency, the pain of watching the sister car succeed week after week is undoubtedly taking a mental toll. Kyle Petty suggested that the anger we saw flash on the track at Martinsville was merely a symptom of a much larger frustration. It is that classic, undeniable tension between teammates, where one is thriving and the other is desperately trying to keep up. When you are pushing your car past its limits to prove you belong, you make mistakes. But this was not just a mistake. It was a boiling point. The psychological weight of Reddick's success finally cracked Wallace's composure, leading to a rash decision that compromised his entire race. You also have to consider the reputation of Carson Hocevar in this entire equation. Hocevar is known for being an aggressive driver, someone who does not mind rubbing fenders and making enemies on the track. Because of that reputation, some fans initially wanted to blame him for initiating the contact. However, the expert consensus, including both Richard and Kyle Petty, was that Hocevar was actually the victim here. He was holding his line, racing clean, and simply became the unfortunate target of Wallace's misdirected rage. Defending Hocevar against his usual aggressive reputation adds a layer of dramatic irony to the situation. The guy who usually starts the trouble was the one who got wiped out by someone else's emotional breakdown. This stark juxtaposition of conflicting viewpoints only fueled the fire, turning the incident into the most fiercely debated topic in the sport. Everyone has an opinion, and the dividing lines are drawn sharply between those who believe it was a genuine mistake and those who see it as a calculated act of retaliation. Now, here is the most painful part of this entire ordeal. The real tragedy is not just the destroyed race cars or the bruised egos, it is the devastating impact this crash has on the championship standings. Wallace's own spotter took to a popular insider podcast to break down the sheer gravity of the situation, and his words were nothing short of heartbreaking. The spotter revealed that before the wreck, they were sitting pretty. They were executing a solid strategy, running well, and positioned to score maximum points. But because of that one split-second decision to retaliate, Wallace's day ended in the garage. The spotter brutally detailed the mathematical reality of the crash, explaining how they plummeted from a comfortable third, placed in the championship points, all the way down to a precarious 11th. That kind of drop is catastrophic at this stage of the season. It stings because it was completely avoidable. The spotter kept repeating one specific phrase over and over again, letting it hang in the air like a dark cloud, self-inflicted. It was a self-inflicted wound, a self-inflicted disaster, a self-inflicted blow to their championship dreams. That repetition of the word self-inflicted is what truly resonated with the audience and the experts alike. When a mechanical failure takes you out of a race, you can chalk it up to bad luck. When another driver makes a mistake and collects you in a wreck, you can be angry, but you are ultimately a victim of circumstance. But when you make a conscious choice to use your bumper as a weapon, and it backfires so spectacularly that it ruins your own season, that is a bitter pill to swallow. The frustration of knowing that you hold the blame entirely in your own hands is a heavy burden for any professional athlete. The insider perspective provided by the spotter peeled back the curtain on the raw, unfiltered disappointment within the team. They know how hard it is to claw your way into championship contention. And to see those points evaporate because of a momentary lapse in emotional control is absolutely brutal. The narrative surrounding Wallace has shifted dramatically. It is no longer just about his potential. It is now a glaring question of his maturity and his ability to handle the immense pressure of high-stakes racing. As the dust finally settles on the track and the mangled cars are hauled back to the race shops in North Carolina, the echoes of Richard Petty's harsh words continue to reverberate throughout the garage. The Martinsville Speedway has always been a place that tests the limits of man and machine. It is a grueling, unforgiving half-mile oval shaped like a paperclip, where tempers run hot and patience is a luxury nobody can afford. The tight corners and long straightaways practically invite conflict. But it takes a true champion to navigate that chaos without losing their head. The philosophy of short-track racing demands aggression, but it also requires a profound level of discipline. When you lose that discipline, the track bites back hard. The story of what happened between Bubba Wallace and Carson Hocevar will be dissected and debated for weeks to come, serving as a cautionary tale for every driver who thinks about letting their anger take the wheel. It is a sobering reminder that in the blink of an eye, a promising season can be completely derailed by a single catastrophic error in judgment. Every fan in the grandstands and the millions watching at home were left speechless by the sudden destruction that unfolded before their eyes, proving that stock car racing remains a wildly unpredictable spectacle. The history books will remember this race not for the fantastic displays of skill or the thrilling passes for the lead, but for the shocking moment when a driver let his emotions get the best of him and paid the ultimate price